Yeah, thanks. So my name is Jim Thompson. I'm the fish passage coordinator with Maryland DNR. And essentially what that means is I try to build fish passages or coordinate fish passages and remove dams whenever possible to improve migratory fish. So I want to give a real quick update on the fish passage program, and then I'll talk specifically on the Patapsco River and the dams that we're working on there. It's some really great work, very promising, and we've seen some results. I'll talk about the actual removal process because it was a very large dam removal, one of the largest on the East Coast. And I'll tell you about the monitoring efforts we've done and the improvements we've seen. So as he just said, my program began in 1987. It's part of the Chesapeake Bay Agreement to restore fish passage at dams and remove stream blockages wherever necessary to restore passage for migratory fish. The fish passage program primarily got started because of American shad. As Matt told you, it was probably the most commercially important fish in the Chesapeake Bay, maybe even on the East Coast. And even George Washington had a shad landing at his house down in Mount Vernon. And this picture is largely American shad taken on the Susquehanna River near the Battery Islands. And also, as Matt pointed out, the decline of American shad has really plummeted, and it was closed in state waters in 1981, and hickory shad followed shortly after. But you can see we've had millions of pounds of landings, nearly 8 million pounds in the late 1800s, go down to virtually nothing before it was shut down. A couple of different reasons, as Matt alluded to, pollution, a big one. Definitely weren't so cautious about what we did back then. Sedimentation caused by deforestation, cutting all the trees down, all the sediment washing to the rivers, disturbed the stream and covered up the shad eggs, and they didn't survive. Overfishing is a big one, not only in the ocean, like Matt alluded to, but in the rivers. This is another picture taken near Susquehanna River. And, as you guys have seen, when these fish migrate in the spring, they're susceptible to being caught by the thousands or hundreds of thousands at a time because they come in such big schools. And so they would run these big seine operations, collect hundreds of thousands of pounds of shad, salt them down, and use that as a food source. So the one that I work on, the biggest cause of decline that I work on is the construction of dams and other blockages. So stream blockages occur in many different ways. We're pretty familiar with the big dams like Conowingo Dam in the upper left, but it can be anything from a culvert like this one on Route 50 on the way to Ocean City, really small low-head dams, pipe culverts, larger water reservoir dams, all different shapes and sizes can block shad. Shad don't jump like brook trout do or salmon, so really any kind of water drop can prevent shad and herring migrations. So we've got obviously things like the fish lift at Conowingo Dam to help get fish above the really large dams. Medium-sized dams, we use a fish ladder called the Danielle ladder, which is essentially like a concrete chute with baffles inside to slow the water down. And then for smaller dams, we use what's called an Alaskan steep pass. It's essentially a aluminum chute. It has aluminum baffles inside for small dams. And then dam removals. Dam removals are quickly becoming the favorite way to remove blockages. And they're my personal favorite, and a lot of funding agencies are no longer even funding fish passages unless it's a really special case. So why dam removal? This is a small dam near Centerville, Maryland, tributary to the Corsica River. But dam removal is favored for so many reasons. One, it's public safety. And in fact, some dams, it's the public safety factor that gets us money to remove the dam or public permission to remove a dam more than anything else. Reduced maintenance. These fish ladders are very hard to maintain. You can see this is a Bloede Dam. Before the dam was taken out, the fish ladder there would routinely get trashed and damaged. The picture to the right is Daniels Dam on the Patapsco River upstream. It's the last remaining dam on the main stem. Every year, this one gets clogged with sediment. It takes a lot of work to get opened up, but also efficiency. And Matt talked about this at Conowingo as well. This dam here, this is a Simpkins Dam on the Patapsco before it was taken out. And this dam is 293 feet wide. But the ladder on the far left of the image right there is only 3 feet wide. So it's really difficult for these fish, even who want to pass, to find the ladders, to find the entrance of the ladder to go upstream. So efficiency is much better with the dam removal. And also the dam removal is just better for restoring the river. You know, when you have a natural free-flowing stream like this one here in the top of the graphic, you know, you got free-flowing water, lots of oxygen, gravel beds, and then you put a dam in place, it slows the water down, it makes it wider, the stream wider and slower moving, so the water heats up, sediment drops out, covers up all the habitat that's available, and also reduces passage, of course. So talk a little bit more about the Patapsco now. We're doing a lot of work in the Patapsco River. The Patapsco River flows roughly 63 kilometers in central Maryland. So it's a pretty large watershed. The tidal portion forms the Baltimore Harbor. And it's home to at least 55 species of fish as documented by the Maryland Biological Stream Survey, including 11 migratory fish. And it was a very important river for the Industrial Revolution in Maryland. The Bloede Dam was built pretty early on, and it was actually built to provide electricity to Ellicott City. It was built in 1907, but by 1924, it had already ceased operation. Part of this problem was because the Bloede Dam was getting so much, or the Patapsco River had so much sediment in it that the turbines were clogging up with sediment, which actually led to the formation of the Patapsco Valley State Park. The company who owned the dam bought up all the land around the river and created buffers to try to reduce the sediment coming into the river, which eventually led to the Patapsco State Park. So the removal process for Bloede was quite long. We realized it was a very important dam to take out for fish passage. It was the first dam on the main stem. But unfortunately, before we could take the dam out, we had to remove a sewer line, or actually bypass it. If you look on the far right of the image, this is Bloede Dam. The sewer line, when they put the sewer line in, the dam was already there. They ran the sewer line right along the edge of the river, and it actually went through the dam. In some of our studies, we thought that once the dam was taken out, a lot of the sediment may move downstream. And in fact, a lot of it did, but not as much as we originally thought. And there was a concern that once the sediment eroded out, that the sewer line could be standing in midair, and essentially had 10 feet of area underneath of it. And this was a 42-inch supercritical sewer line that had to be relocated before the dam could be taken out. And that took almost a year to do that, and was a considerable part of the money for the project. Once the sewer line was relocated, the dam was breached on September 11th, 2018. And it's pretty exciting. I've only been part of 2 dam removals where explosives were used. Bloede Dam was one, and then the Rappahannock Embry Dam, the Rappahannock was the other. So there's been a big focus on monitoring throughout this project. It's one of the largest dam removals on the East Coast. Only the ones in Maine have exceeded this one. And so it was a really big attention seeker for not only the regulatory agencies in Maryland, but along the East Coast. And so we really wanted to do our documentation to show that this was a good step, a good thing for the river. There was a lot of different methods involved, and I'm going to speak mostly on the biological monitoring. There's also been a ton of physical monitoring as well. Physical in terms of like the stream bed and the water quality, but DNR, working with the Maryland Biological Stream Survey, and excuse me, Smithsonian Environmental Research Center did electrofishing, hoop net sampling, fish traps, ichthyoplankton, and eDNA. Electrofishing occurred at 3 to 5 sites weekly during the spawning period, March through May, and it began before their dam was removed, and it's ongoing today. In fact, they'll be doing monitoring again this year. You can see Daniels Dam here. We had a site just below that. Bloede Dam, we had 2 sites between, and we had 2 sites down below Bloede Dam. We also deployed a hoop net onto the exit of the ladder. So this is the upstream of the ladder at the top of the dam. And any fish that used the ladder would get stuck in this net, could be collected. That was checked daily. The hoop net, they found 15 different species in 4 years. They only found 2 migratory fish. Those were sea lamprey and gizzard shad. And no shad or American shad, hickory shad, or river herring were observed using the ladder. even though those fish were observed downstream. As I said before, fish ladders are largely ineffective. And this ladder in particular was very, very tall and had several turns in it, which made it even less effective than other ladders. Fish traps were used in 2019 because we had some issues with our boats. We actually sunk one of the sampling boats and were without a vessel for a while, and also with COVID. So we used these fish traps that were done in the 1970s by DNR personnel to monitor shad and herring across Maryland. Using the electrofishing, they sampled the best available habitat with small boats, recorded catch per unit effort, and then also retained some individuals for odorless. So results, electrofishing, they found 10 migratory species, including blueback herring, alewife, and hickory shad. These fish were present to the Bloede Dam, but none were found above the dam. And we did collect American shad further down in the tidal waters. Post removal, using the fish traps, we collected a total of 19 different species, including 5 migratory fish. Alewife and blueback were found downstream of Bloede, but not above. And we collected gizzard shad and white perch at Daniels Dam, which showed they could pass the area where the dam used to be, which was promising. Just a picture of some of the fish in the trap. This particular one here, gizzard shad at Daniels Dam. Even though gizzard shad aren't our target species, it's promising to see them making it to Daniels Dam, because as far as swim speeds and physical capabilities, they're pretty similar to gizzard shad, hickory shad, American shad. So that was promising. Electrofishing, quillback, gizzard shad, white perch, northern snakehead were all collected upstream of the Bloede Dam. 11 species, migratory species in total. So these were all new fish that we hadn't seen above the former Bloede Dam. Obviously, the snakehead's not encouraging, but everything else is very promising. In 2021, we found our first herring above Bloede Dam, which was pretty exciting. And in fact, I don't do much of this survey work. It's usually done by other folks in DNR, but that particular day I was helping out and volunteering, and I caught the first one, which was kind of exciting because I did so much work on the dam removal. So one alewife was caught at Ilchester Road, and then a blueback herring was caught a couple months later at Oella Avenue. Last year, we caught 2 more herring. So we know the fish are able to make it past the former dam. We're not seeing great numbers yet, and not nearly like the numbers we're seeing below the former dam, but at least shows that the fish are able to move upstream. And we hope this trend continues. Just looking at some catch per unit effort of fish caught on electrofishing below the dam. In 2011 and 2012, we weren't differentiating between herring, so we kind of lumped them together. 2013, we started breaking out alewife and blueback herring. So you can see some variability in it. We don't really see any clear signs. 2016 looked like it was a strong year. We don't really see very large numbers of American shad making it to the former Bloede Dam. Most of those numbers are seen down close to the tidal waters. And there was some stocking done of American shad and herring as well in Patapsco. There's some additional work done by CERC, the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center. We've done pit tagging and also eDNA of fish, which is essentially taking a water sample and straining out for the DNA of shad and herring, which can be quite effective. And we're also looking for herring eggs. So sometimes the adults can come and go in a matter of hours or days, and we may miss them, but the eDNA and the eggs will stay in the river longer than the actual adult fish will. And obviously by finding any one of those, we know that the adults were present. Herring eggs were only found below Bloede Dam pre-sampling, and we still haven't found any above, even though we've seen adults. So we can't confirm that spawning is happening above yet. But we do know that fish are able to make it above, even though they're not doing it so in large numbers yet. eDNA is a little more promising. We're definitely seeing many more sites with actual eDNA in them. And in fact, last year, it hasn't been fully analyzed yet, but we found eDNA of herring above Daniels Dam. So we assume that at some point they were using the latter Daniels Dam and making it even further upstream than that. So it's my hope that in time we'll see stronger runs in the Patapsco. Just want to real quickly show you a video that I took of the Patapsco River. This was in 2019, I think in August. And April 29th, 2019. The former dam, try to get rid of this real quick. The former dam was right about in here. The sewer line used to run through this area here, and now it's located underneath this trail area. But again, this was shortly after the removal. You can see already a lot of the sediments evacuated out of the area. And it's already returned. You see the where the sediment used to be covering the bottom. We're already seeing gravel bars and nice riffles. This is really good spawning habitat for herring right here. And I'll just let the video play out. We were still in the middle of the process of planting trees and stabilizing the banks. This is now fully vegetated now, as you'll see later on in the next video. But all this, again, was underwater. This is all part of the impoundment of the former dam. This was the access route we created to get to the dam and do a lot of our work. This is the swinging bridge for the Gristmill Trail. So this next video was taken in October 2021. Again, the dam was right about in here. You can see the vegetation is really taking place. It's looking much more natural now. Everything is vegetated. We don't really expect any more erosion to take place from this point forward. Just kind of fast forward upstream a little bit, but it's we're really happy with the results of the removal, and everybody that's been a part of the project did work exactly as we thought, if not better. So we're really happy with it. All right, let's see how to get past this one. So thoughts in conclusion, the Bloede Dam removal has been a big success. We've confirmed presence of 2 new species immediately upstream of the dam immediately after it was taken out in 2019, and that was with still doing a bunch of work in the river. We confirmed target species, which we consider river herring or shad within 3 years. And we've seen at least 8 new species upstream within 3 years. And the Patapsco River is not known as being a great herring or shad fishery. So as far as we're concerned, any results are positive. Just want to touch base really quickly on the Daniels Dam eel ladder, which is the last dam on the main stem Patapsco River. We built an eel ladder on this dam in 2018 before the dam was taken out, the Bloede Dam was taken out, and it's monitored every year, May through September. In 2018, 32 eels caught at the ladder, 53 eels in 2019, and you can see the number of eels have really gone up since the dam was taken out, and we're extremely excited about this. I won't go into the full study, but eels, you may know, are a host species for mussels, Elliptio campanata, and there was some work done by USGS in the Delaware River, and they found that there was an estimated 6.1 million mussels per mile of the river, which could filter out the river 6 times every day in the Delaware River. In the Susquehanna River, these eels or these mussels were largely non-existent, even though it's within the range of the mussels. It's thought because the only host species for this mussel is the American eel. And because Patapsco Dam blocked these eels from being in the Susquehanna River, the mussels died out. And so mussel populations in Susquehanna are not nearly as good as the Delaware River, which means the Susquehanna is not getting filtered out nearly as much as it could be. So we see similar declines of Elliptio campanata in other rivers that have large dams, and it's hopeful that by bringing back these eels, we can reestablish those mussel populations. So it's not just benefiting the fish that we're targeting, but also the mussels. So that's all I have on that. I know I may have gone kind of quick, but any questions, or are we going to do questions in the chat?
Jim, you got a couple in the Q&A.
Okay. Are there any plans to increase fish passes in the Potomac bypassing Little Falls Dam? The fish ladder is not very effective. There's no plans right now that I'm aware of by bypassing Little Falls. I think part of that is because of Great Falls shortly upstream. We haven't done any work to try and get fish above natural blockages just yet. But there is talk of trying to do more eel passage on the Potomac. As strange as it may seem, we do find eels above Great Falls. I guess they can use some of either the canal, or they can get up on the water, the cascades on the sides of Great Falls. So there is work or thought of doing more eel passages on the Potomac. Thanks for taking the dam out. What a great job. Thanks. It was pretty exciting. Is Oxen Run Dam going to be removed? Brian, I'm not sure what river that's on. But I do know Oxen Run Dam. I think it's a trout habitat. I do remember hearing about that with dam. Will Daniels Dam be removed? There is discussion on Daniels Dam. It is considered for removal. There's feasibility studies going on right now. They're currently doing sediment analysis and testing to determine not only the quality, but also the amount of sediment there. DNR, working with American Rivers and NOAA, applied for a grant to pay for some feasibility studies. It wasn't funded this year, but we are putting in for more funding for future years. So DNR is considering it, but no formal decision has been made just yet. It's right behind Blue Plains in DC. I'll have to check on that one. I'm going to give you my email address and I can try and get back to you.
I have a question. Does Maryland DNR have any guidance for recreational anglers who catch blue catfish, knowing their impact on the system?
I'm not exactly sure what the official policy is, but we encourage anglers to keep and eat invasive species whenever possible, although we can't require it, if that helps.
Matt, are you still around?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I have a question. You talked about shad mortality. One thing we've noticed in the last several years with the improving American shad run, the size of the fish has been smaller than historically. I mean, I realized that when I first started fishing that the shad run was collapsing, but there were still a few good years left that I was able to take advantage of. And so that fish that I caught 50 years ago was of a size we just don't see anymore. We did see something bigger in 2005 or 6 by a fellow named Mike Alper, a famous shad angler on the Potomac. I have a picture of it. It was released, of course, definitely over 7 pounds. Now, I don't know if Bill Gordon is still with us, but he spoke to us last year and he said the same thing has been noticed on the Delaware River where he's based, but he also fishes up and down the coast for American shad. So do you know what's causing that trend?
So sometimes what can happen when you have a fish that's over, like a species that's really overfished, is essentially sometimes I guess in terms of like fitness, the better, instead of living long and getting big, a lot of times fish will switch to getting shorter and spawning more quickly. So it could just be possibly an artifact of, since they are fished so heavily, they may have switched to essentially spawning earlier rather than basically waiting longer and getting bigger. So it could possibly be due to that. I know they look at a lot of like ASMSC studies look at American shad size over time of age, and it's not all rivers haven't seen decline, but definitely whenever there's a trend, it's usually like you're seeing it's on the decrease where the shad are getting slightly smaller. And we've seen that with river herring too. You kind of have a truncation of fish not getting quite as old or quite as large as they used to be. I also just quickly, I respond to some people in the chat, but some people are asking what the catch and release mortality of the shad is. And one study that was done in Maryland shows it was less than 1%. So luckily, I think because they don't swallow the hook, you can catch and release is pretty, in terms of the things impacting American shad, it's not really a factor. So if you're fishing for American shad, as long as you're taking good care of them, you don't have to worry about hurting shad populations.
Okay, would there be fewer repeat spawners? Could that be the reason they don't get as big? And if so, is that because of problems out in the ocean?
Yeah, so I mean, that's the hard part with American shads. It's kind of two pronged approach. We have issues with the rivers with pollution and blockages, and then out in the ocean, you have other issues too. So it can be both that one of the biggest issues right now is, and with really offshore is kind of bycatch in the Atlantic herring and Atlantic mackerel fisheries. So there are catch caps there now, but there's also issues where getting in proper observer coverage and how much fish is really too much. So I mean, that can possibly be it. We have been tracking repeat spawning over time, and it's kind of, repeat spawning is kind of like the metric itself isn't necessarily a great barometer for how the shad population are doing, because the one nice thing is if you're having lots of repeat spawners in your population, that's good because it means a lot of your adult fish are surviving. But if you have a few like virgin spawners or ones that haven't spawned before, if you don't have many of them, that also means that not a lot of the juveniles are making it out to the rivers and coming back. So basically, sometimes that can mean the ones that make it out to adulthood are surviving and coming back, but their offspring unfortunately aren't surviving to get out there. So a lot of times we've actually seen repeat spawning increasing. So sometimes it's just hard. Basically, once they get out into the ocean, it's really hard to know what's happening to them, I guess is the best way of saying it.
Okay, Bill Gordon just got back from overseas, so he may not be listening anymore. Bill, are you out there?
I'm here, yep.
Hey, great, you're awake. I just wondered what your reaction was to tonight in general, and how you did down south this year.
So I'll do Florida first. I was there the 20th, 21st, 22nd of January, fishing the St. Johns River. I only had one day to fish because of several different health factors with other people that were going to go. But regardless, the day we fished, we did catch a lot of shad, mostly hickory shad. We were a little early as far as the timing for the American shad run there. But in the meantime, the guys that I monitor, there's a great Facebook page that kind of monitors the shad run in Florida. It's called Shad on the Fly, a great group of 800 plus fly fishermen that frequent the area, giving lots of tips, basically showing you exactly where to go, the flies that are present. They're having what I would call a banner year, like the good old days is what they're calling it. And I go back fishing there from the mid 80s, when quote unquote, it was the good old days. And right now they're having a real retro type of run with, many shad days in the 20s, 30s and more fish down there. And remember one thing I told you about the St. John's, extremely difficult place to catch shad. It's really, really different than any of our eastern rivers that we fish. Tannic acid, very low gradient, difficult to find, current seams where they hang, but it seems this year it's really, really a heavy run, which bodes well for the whole East Coast, in my opinion.
And do you that is great news. Bailey had a blast down there and he plans to try it again next year. He was there, he had the timing right for the American shad. So
Yep.
Do you have anything? I mean, you fish up and down the coast, fish the Delaware.
Yep.
Does anything you hear tonight make you optimistic or less so?
So I had two comments. One was about the Conowingo Dam fishery. I fished that probably more than 60 days a year during the shad run. Unless there's a weather problem, I will fish that every day and I'm actually starting tomorrow. I'll be down there. The water's warm enough to start to see some hickory shad movement for sure. There's also been reports of very large stripers being caught. So if the stripers are there, there's food. I will say though, and Matthew, I want to challenge you a little bit. I'm an old timer. I go way back to the day when, there were no shad around. And then in the early 2000s, there were, hundreds of thousands of shad being lifted. One of the things I always complain about is the timing of the operation of the runs there, or the fish lifts. I have many documented pictures of American shad there from early March all through the month of March. And the shad lifts typically don't start movement till about mid-April. And I know you talked about a temperature and things like that, but I'm of the knowledge that there's many shad in the river systems long before people start to catch them. They're in the Delaware River right now. I know that for a fact. We typically caught them last 2 weeks of February when there was a warm water discharge that would enable the water temperatures to approach 50 degrees, and therefore they would strike. But that's you called it, encouraging news that the young of the year is there, but you just don't see the returning numbers of Americans in the last, I want to say 10, 15 years at Conowingo. It's been very disappointing. I think, and I talk to the biologists there as often as I can, and I try to, get out my news and show pictures and with dates and all that thing, that there are American shad there. And it's difficult when the river is high and the lifts are difficult to operate. I get all that. But, I always, try to see some kind of improvement if they would just start earlier. That's my one comment.
Yeah, I think.
Hey,
you're
Matt.
right.
Well, Matt, you can respond to that, but also, on the same sort of topic, any studies on how successfully the juvenile shad are getting back through those dams?
Yeah, I can speak to both of those. So right now, Conowingo, the way the lift operations work is they start, like you said, in April. And essentially they start lifting until they don't lift every day until they start catching multiple fish or temperature hit a certain threshold. So I think that's part of the issue. It'd definitely be better if they started lifting in early March. I almost wonder too if the early shad are just spawning potentially. If they're potentially spawning in the Susquehanna at the flats potentially before they go further up, but it's definitely, I definitely believe that they're there early. Right now, like I said, that's the current thing is they start lifting in March until the American shad show up, and then once they show up, they have to start lifting every day, and then until mid-June. In terms of mortality, yeah, there's been studies on that. Both the adults and the juveniles, really at all 4 of the dams, and from the top of it depends on the dam. Each dam's different. The juveniles, I think the survival is about, I want to say it's about 90% for most of the turbines through the dams. The adults, I think it's sometimes more like 75. So sometimes that can stack up because you have 4 dams there, but there have been studies about they basically will tag American shad with a little self-inflating balloon and have it go through the turbines and estimate how many percent gets through. So I think it's about 90% for most of the turbines, at least the more fish-friendly turbines at the dams for the juveniles.
Yeah, that's juveniles. I would say the adults, though, especially Conowingo, I don't think many percentage make it through there alive, right?
I think it's about 75%. I think York Haven, the furthest one up, we've had more issues. I'd have to look into the data. The problem is each turbine is different. So some of the dams are almost like 50%, and some is considered almost none unless they're spilling the water. So that's kind of the issue sometimes with the adults is that one dam, you may have like a over 50% chance, but you do have 4 dams there. So some of them do make it out, but sometimes it depends on flow and depending on the turbine, certain dams are better than the others. Conowingo is not terrible, but again, you have 4 dams there. And I think that's kind of issue with the fish lifts is that they worked, but you had 4 for the fish to try to get up. And while they can maybe get up one, it just, you kind of have to multiply that before, and that keeps splashing your numbers and you get past all the dams. And unfortunately, the same thing happens with mortality. Each time you have a chance of getting a propeller strike through those turbines, you don't have to get through one turbine, you have to get through four. But when they did get the shad, when they got the shad past all four dams in the spawning grounds, I mean, the shad came back. So they know if they get them past the dams, even with the turbine mortalities, the shad will come back. It's just getting them past those four dams is the biggest hurdle.
Okay, I had something for Jim, and I'm not sure that there's much left in the Q&A box, but meanwhile, Jim, that once the fish start getting up in greater numbers up beyond Bloede Dam, are you confident that there's the right spawning habitat up there for them, and would that apply to hickory shad as well as herring or even American shad? How far could they reasonably be expected to travel up the Patapsco?
So what I've understood and my belief is that herring and fish in general, a lot like, birds or other species, they conserve energy. So they often will only go as far as they need to go to find suitable habitat for spawning. If they get to suitable habitat and it's occupied by other fish, they may go a little further up. So a lot of research suggests that it's kind of density dependent. So the more fish you have, the further upstream they'll go. As far as Patapsco, I do think the habitat upstream of Bloede is phenomenal. You saw in some of the aerial videos, you see this really nice gravelly substrate, lots of riffles. There's also some flatter sections and some pools. So there's good habitat upstream. They could easily make it to Daniels Dam. I'm not very confident that Daniels will be very well at passing fish with the ladder right now, although there was a test done that shows they are able to pass it. White suckers have a very similar swim speed and design as herring do. So I think they could use the ladder if possible, if they get there. I don't think American shad will make it very far, the Patapsco. I think they prefer the larger rivers.
Yeah.
Hickory shad, though, I do think we could see them as far up as Ellicott City. But hickory shad numbers in the Patapsco are pretty low. You don't see very many people targeting hickory shad there. They'll occasionally catch them on spoons when they're fishing for trout, though.
Well, hickory shad seem to have revived themselves. I guess I did see once the Maryland stocked hickory shad for a while in a few rivers. Isn't that right?
Yeah, there's some thoughts, like Matt talked about the overfishing or the bycatch in offshore. There's some thoughts that maybe hickory shad don't go as far offshore as American shad do, so maybe they're not hit by that bycatch quite as much. In fact, we've seen hickory shad, like 2 or 3 year old hickory shad in the bay. Sometimes they get snagged when people are trolling for rockfish or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think maybe those fish don't get hit as hard as by the offshore fishery. And also because they maybe focus on smaller streams than American shad do.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not quite as impacted by the dams and other blockages as American shad are.
But in my lifetime, or my lifetime of fishing, which is over 50 years, they've really become a huge run on the Potomac. Whereas when I was a kid, I never caught one. I had to go to the Rappahannock. So it seems to me they did that on their own. And I'm wondering if they could do, not in those numbers because it's a smaller stream, but could they revive their own run on the Patapsco because of these dam removals?
I think so. Yeah, obviously it takes time. The generational cycle for shad is so long. So you have one good run or one good spawning season, and it may be 3 years to 4 years or 5 years for American shad before you see this fish return. So it's such a hard. It's not like bass in a pond where you can see results in 2 years or 3 years. With shad, it's several generations of shad before you start seeing improvements. But I do think we're trending in the right direction.
Is it going to be dependent on good river flow, and climate change is creating such strange conditions? We've had plenty of recent experiences on the Potomac of low flow during the shad run, and does that harm the chances on a river like the Patapsco of fish getting further upriver?
I think so. I was looking in, I forget the presenter's name now, but I saw his USGS slides with the temperature and the flows. For the monitoring I've done.
Oh, John
and John,
Kuriyama,
yeah. From the work that I've done on rivers, mostly Lake Deer Creek and Tuckahoe, I see the biggest movements of fish. One is temperatures are rising and water is falling. So after a rain event, I see a lot of fish moving just as that water is receding. And I think that's an evolutional style to try and get above blockages like beaver dams and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And rising temperatures. When you see a falling temperature, I see the fish really back off. So sorry, what was your question? I think I kind of got sidetracked there.
No, I was just talking about a river like that probably would benefit from higher flow or at least average flow during the springtime as far as fish getting upriver.
Yeah,
So hopefully we'll have some years like that, you know, in the next few, so this revival can get jump started a little bit.
yeah. And like I said, we are seeing herring in big numbers below where the dam used to be. I don't know quite why they're not going upstream. They clearly have the ability to. Like if you look at the conditions, there's no drops, there's no temperature issues or chemical issues that we can see that would prevent them from going further up. I think just as density gets bigger downstream, they'll move further up on their own. Definitely flow plays a part though, for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's incredible on the Potomac how, you know, plenty of American shad are spawning down near Mount Vernon, and then others keep going. And historically, they, you know, some would go all the way to Great Falls. So, and you have even more extreme distances on the Delaware, rivers like that, you know. So maybe it takes time for the ones that want to go farther to develop. One more look at Q&A. There was a question about Fletcher's, and all I would say about Fletcher's is stay tuned as far as when they're going to open. It would normally be and was planned to be the last weekend of March, but it may be 1 week earlier this year. I don't see any more questions, but
I see
John,
one on Little Falls.
well, I thought that was an older one, but go ahead and
I've seen
address it.
I've seen a couple questions on Little Falls in the chat. I'm unaware of any plans to increase passage at Little Falls. That's an Army Corps project. In fact, I got an email now. They're trying to wrap up the grant from 10 years ago, 15 years ago. They're trying to wrap something up. They're asking me for information. That was before I even worked there, but I don't know of any plans to try to increase passage efficiency at the Little Falls project. I think they call it a weir.
It's a weir.
Yeah.
I think the main problem there is that, as I understand it, there's never been adequate funding to see how many shad are getting through.
It's a really tough place to sample and work for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they did sampling at Great Falls for just a few years after it was put in. And yeah, it's tough up there. There's probably not too many other places to do it either. So I don't think we really know how effective it is. The run has improved nicely since that fish weir was put in. So one hopes it had something to do with it. So Jim Cummins is hopefully listening. He was away as well and got back before I could get him tied into this to tonight's Shad Night. But we'll be speaking with him another time, and he's been helpful every year on this effort. So John Kuriyama, did you have anything else, or did you answer questions in the chat that would have broader interest?
I tried to, Mark, and anyone is welcome to contact me anytime. Both your and my emails are in some of the videos and handouts that you have on the NCC-TU website. So feel free. I have a couple of emails coming in already. So if your question wasn't answered, or if you want to ask it now, please do. And we'll see you on the river in a couple of weeks, it seems.
Yeah, I got a question real quick.
Shoot.
Just for anyone to field this. I mean, we've had really warm temperatures this year, like no snow at all. And just looking at water temperatures, I checked earlier, it was in the 40s just for the Potomac at Lookout Point. So is that going to affect the shad? Like they're probably going to come a couple weeks earlier. And I know you mentioned that Fletcher's could open earlier, just if it has to do with that.
Yeah, well, Fletcher's can only open as early as they can get it prepared. There's a lot of work to do. And, you know, the ice rink hasn't closed yet. So Alex can't get down there before a certain time.
I'm
So
not even
one-
on that payroll, so
There he is.
I don't know. But I think there will be a shad caught in February. That's my opinion.
Yeah, this is going to be the year of the February shad. We've been waiting for it. Every year it's been earlier and earlier. And it would not surprise me if it's caught tomorrow or Friday. So
There's
get down
shad there.
There's
Yes,
definitely shad there. I tried today, but no luck. It's still a little stained.
I'd put my money on Bill for tomorrow or Friday if someone was going to catch it, or Campo or Binstead over there. But yeah, like Alex said, the turbidity's up. It's going to be real windy on Friday. So for
I'm
those of us
still
that
not
travel
fishing
more,
tomorrow. Somebody else can take
Yeah,
that.
that turbidity is not dropping. It's sort of flattened out at a slightly high level. But once it clears up a little, and of course, tomorrow's 80-degree weather is going to spike the water temperature.
but Jack, we've seen this before. There's been years where it's got super warm early and all the ornamental trees bloom, but it's still 3 weeks will go by before the run actually starts. So it could just be sort of a false alarm, and we might get back to those lower temperatures for a couple of weeks in February and March here.
It's also nerve-wracking though, because do you remember a couple of years ago where we got it warmer like this and all of a sudden it froze, and that was really damaging. That's definitely scary. Just looking forward this year, but hopefully with an 80-degree day, it doesn't drop below freezing.
It's scheduled to drop below freezing. I have 27 on my future forecast for
Oh no.
Okay, there was a question. I think it's disappeared now, but Jim, you're still around. Jim Thompson, are you still there? Actually,
Yeah, I'm here.
oh, good. Jim, there had been a question about the Anacostia, and I was talking with Fong Tru the other day, and I believe he is, have you worked with him?
I haven't worked with him, but I've coordinated with him on lots of different stuff.
Okay, yeah, he's, you know, for the Council of Governments, he works on the Anacostia, and they're doing some of the things you're doing on the Patapsco to see if herring are making it up past dam removals on tributaries of the Anacostia. So can you answer that question? Somebody's basically asking, what about the Anacostia?
Yeah, I can't speak too much on that. I don't do a lot of work down there. Fong does that work, and there's some folks in DC that do some work down there. So I can't really speak on monitoring. In fact, I haven't done a lot of monitoring at all for 6 or 7 years because our budget's gotten cut. So I do more coordination. But you know, if you can connect that person to Fong, or if that person can email me, I can give my email in the chat, and then I can try and get some information. But a lot of the work was done on those dam removals and the fish passage projects was done as part of the Woodrow Wilson mitigation projects. And that was kind of before my time.
Yeah. All right, thanks. And thanks again for your presentation. And you also, Matt, this was very interesting. I hope people enjoyed it. It went just a little longer than I thought, but some of us could probably talk all night, but we shouldn't. And we need to get some sleep so we can go down to Fletcher's tomorrow morning early. Actually, if I went tomorrow, I'd go in the afternoon, but I hope everybody enjoyed tonight's Shad Night. One last thing, I know that Rob mentioned the silent auction. And that's an important part of the event. The fundraising does benefit Friends of Fletcher's Cove. There's some news there. I got an email during this event tonight. I got an email from Rob saying that he'd like to offer a trip. So we'll be adding another trip, or even two, he said, to the auction. And I wish I had a link to give you right now and so forth, but you've probably gotten an email about it with a link. I'm sure we're going to have a link on the website at the Shad tab page. And
Mark, I dropped a link to somebody who asked. I hope it was visible to everybody. And I should note that your son Alex has a $600 bid now. So if people want to pay that much to fish with him, for God's sakes, all the other bids should go up.
well, somebody in the Q&A, there are no open questions anymore, but somebody asked how his double axle was doing. I don't know if he wants to explain.
Hey, guys, I'm logging off on now. I'm going to get some
Okay.
sleep. And thank you very much.
Jim. Thanks, Jim.
Feel free to leave my email to anybody who has any questions. I'll get back to them.
Okay, bye-bye. Do you want to explain, Alex? There's probably nobody watching anyway.
I'm a better ice skater than fisherman anyway, so
Okay,
the double axle is just fine, thanks.
yeah, so. All right, when does the ice rink close?
If I tell you, then you're gonna want me to open Fletcher's earlier. Why are you prompting?
Not me. I don't want you to.
March 5th.
All right, Rob, thank you. Everybody else, thank you. Thank you, Bill, Gordon, and our fly tires, Jack, Tanner, Jamie remotely, and of course, John Curiala. We'll see you on the river and next year for Shad Night.
Good night, all.
Everyone, bye-bye.
Good night, guys.